Welcome to another Workshop Wednesday. My name is Dan DeLong. I'm here with Carrie, Kahn, who's finishing up her lunch, it looks like.
All finished.
Okay, good. And we're also joined today with Vikram from File. Thank you, Vikram, for taking out time out of your day to join us. Where are you in the world these days?
Well, I'm usually in south of Jersey, but right now I'm in India.
Oh,
wow.
just around the corner.
Just around the corner. Yeah, that's right.
Well,
thanks, Dan. Thanks,
you,
Carrie, for having me over. Really excited.
Yeah. And as we talked about it yesterday, we were talking about best practices of setting up expense cards, and when you have a card holder and you do a parent and a child relationship and adding in another sub account so that you can track the payments and things of that nature. So we are trying to we wanted to have you guys on because you have actually come up with a way not to have to do all that that stuff. So we want to talk a little bit about that on today's workshop. But if anybody's watching from either YouTube or Facebook or wherever it's Twitch, I mean, we also go out to Twitch and LinkedIn. Put in the chat like where you're from. Where are you seeing us?
Where are you watching us from?
Exactly. So let's go ahead and Vikram, you have some things that you want to share. It's kind of like walking us through this journey of expense management and what causes people headaches, right, with this process, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a screen share going. Share a few slides. So let me know once it's visible.
I see it.
You can see it. All right, great, cool. Thanks for that. And good. It's great to be presenting today. By way of a little over 3 years, I had partnerships and lead the program File for accounting firms. So full disclosure, I'm not an accountant, but happen to work with a lot of accountants with a variety of accounting firms, right? So starting from several of the top 100 firms to a long tail of smaller, mid-sized accounting firms. And there's one thing which I hear a lot, and my team hears a lot. And, drum rolls over here, receipts. Right. And, you can never have enough of them, but you still manage to make a pile of them, every now and then. And not only from an accountant standpoint, but also from a user or an approver standpoint, it's a big headache. And the other thing that we also hear very often is, credit cards and, statements which are coming in from banks and credit card companies. So when Dan and Carrie spoke about the topic around the credit card reconciliation and the way to set it up in QuickBooks, I was all ears, and I said, you know what, bring me on. And I think there's a big problem that we're talking about here, and I'd love to sort of discuss more about this. So here I am. Thanks again for having me over. So, over the next 20 minutes or so, I'd like to sort of discuss about what is credit card reconciliation, the process involved in the reconciliation of credit cards, typical challenges faced by finance teams, the cost of inefficient reconciliation processes, and also, can an expense management software really help, right? So these are some of the things that we're going to talk about in the 15 to 20 more minutes around from now. So yeah, if you have any questions, any feedback, please keep it coming on the chat. I would love to hear from you on what your thoughts are, what your experiences are around this area, right? So, well, all of us would be aware uh, of some process of credit card reconciliation, I'm sure. It simply means ensuring that the amount that you get on the credit card statement is actually matching the list of individual transactions that you would have performed or a person would have performed using that credit card. Now, in case of a business or a corporate card that has been issued for employees, they're actually spending on behalf of the company.
Mhm.
And that is one of the reasons why it needs to be accurately sort of taken care of and reconciled, and from all across the organization, right? So there are several reasons why this becomes important for an organization. Some of them include, from a tax and audit purpose, to ensure that all expenses are accounted for and are compliant. To also sort of eliminate any possible fraud, possibility of a fraud or an error of the transaction.
Yeah.
Some of these companies also use it very effectively from a budgeting and forecasting standpoint, right? This is a measure often implemented by organizations as they scale, so that they're able to bring in more controls, more um, um, you know predictability in the way the organization functions and employees spend and so on and so forth.
Now, Vikram, question for you. The At what point does this become typically a need for a business to do this, as opposed to, I've got a business bank account, I've got one card. At what point, typically, in your experiences, when does a company approach this situation where they need to give corporate cards or card holder cards to
Right.
their employees for expense purchasing
Great question.
expenses?
Sure, Dan. I think it's a very valid question, because when the organization is really small, like let's say one or two employees or owner-run firms, um, who are managing their own expenses, who are also managing some part of accounting by themselves, it's not too much of an issue, because you are aware of where you're spending, you're aware of how it's being spent, and also from an accounting standpoint, we're not talking volume, so you could have a few tens of expenses that you can probably sit at the towards the end of the month, and then probably code all of them or provide that information. The problem really happens when you have a lot of expenses coming in, right? A few hundreds of expenses. Now, this could be a combination of very few people, using the card and coming up with a lot of expenses, or it could be it could also be having tens of hundreds of employees, or even, for that matter, anything above 5 to 6 employees. This starts to become a problem.
Mm.
Now, another scenario where we've seen this becomes a problem is when you're dealing with somebody outside of your organization to manage this workflow for you, because the context is completely lacking for that external person. They need to rely on you as an owner, or somebody who's using the credit card to provide all the inputs required for doing the reconciliation and also coding that expense
Mm.
right in the accounting software. And that's when it starts to become a problem as well.
Yeah, because I can see this being. You can go ahead and go to your next slide, but I can see this being a challenge, because the people actually doing the expense, charging the credit card, they don't know enough about the business to know what to categorize it appropriately to.
Right.
And then, that person in the middle doesn't know either, right? Like they they don't know what the guy is buying those
Right.
purchases for, and maybe potentially not knowing where to categorize it to. So, like, every one of those particular people knows more than,
Than the
is
person.
Mike. So
Absolutely.
it does make it, I can see where that becomes a challenge, is because there's not one person in that workflow that knows everything, what's being spent, and who to categorize, what to categorize it to, what job to categorize it to, and that sort of
Definitely.
thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you were to look at the credit card reconciliation process itself, very simply put, this is how it
Yeah.
should look, at least, right? On one end, you have the credit card, provider, where the employees are making the spend or spending using the credit card. Ideally, this information needs to come in some form or the other, right? So it could be like a bank statement that can be downloaded from some of the bank's websites, or there are some very specific banks where it is possible to get these feeds into QBO or not as well. On the other end, we rely, to the exact point that you were mentioning, Dan, we rely on employees to provide the details on what that spend is all about, right? Where did they spend it? What did they spend it on? How should it be coded? Is it a gas station? Is it a client meeting? Is it Lowe's? Is it Walmart? Is it just a coffee that they had on the way? Should it be a billable expense? Was it for a specific project or a specific job, etc. Right? So we rely heavily on the employees to fill in this information and provide this information in a timely manner as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
To add to the complexity, we also have credits, reversals, refunds, also sort of put into the mix to add to the complexity for the finance folks.
Yeah.
Right. And
And sometimes the merchant will, like, this actually happened to me in December. I had a legitimate charge that was no problem. I don't have these systems in place, but I saw it in there the same day, the same amount,
right.
which simply means the merchant swiped it twice. And I don't think it
Exactly.
was anything malicious. I think it was just a clerical error. But had I not seen it, that could have, especially if you have high volume, it could be so lost and such an expense to a company if you don't have this under control.
Absolutely, Carrie. That is one of the areas that we see quite often, especially if the company is large enough and you have over, let's say, 15 to 20 employees, or even 50 employees. It's literally impossible to check each and every line item by anybody humanly, right? And that starts to spiral, and you lose control over what employees are spending on, and then you can't check for such errors or issues at all, right? So it becomes really
Right.
tough.
I'm gonna throw out a question here, so anybody who's watching, right? Like, on average, what is the number of card holders that you see in your business or client? So we can, anybody who's seeing this on Facebook or YouTube or our website, throw that in the chat. Is on average, how much of an issue is this? So we can kind of get an idea of what we're dealing with just live today.
And
That's
the fraud
great.
thing is certainly definitely something to be aware of and have some systems in place to catch that, because goodness gracious, if an employee has a business card and they run up to Starbucks, they might grab the wrong one. Is that fraud? Is it a mistake? Then you have to have a system of, okay, well, that needs to come out of your pay, because that's not that's
Yeah,
your morning Joe, it's not a deductible meeting expense. So, and there's
absolutely.
just lots of boundaries and systems. It makes it confusing.
Yeah,
That's
no,
pretty much how
absolutely.
it looks like for most businesses, right?
Yeah.
You have the prior slide. That's the ideal circumstance. Everything nice and orderly and flows right into
Yeah, I did
the source of truth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, a majority of the businesses, it's almost like a lost I like to call it a lost GPS tracker, right? Goes round and round and round and round everywhere around, and then
Left turn, left turn, left
eventually,
turn. Oh, right.
exactly, oh, into the lake there. So,
Yeah. Whoops, sorry.
yeah.
You thought
So
these
yeah, I
charges
mean,
were
this coupled
expensive. Now you have to fix your car.
or claim damages completely. So
Oh,
yeah, exactly. So this is how it looks for most organizations that we've come across, right? And this coupled with broken bank feeds, the bank feeds are never reliable. I mean, that's a big problem for which we've
yes.
heard a lot of customers and partners as well, right? Um, the other thing is, I mean, for the lack of a better word, employees lack the required discipline to turn in receipts on time, which means, sorry, chasing employees for every receipts every month. That's a painstaking activity that finance teams have to undertake, unfortunately. Um, coupled with damaged paper receipts and checking every line item for fraudulent transactions, to what you were talking about,
Yeah.
Carrie, that can take a long time. And I mean, even if you spend a lot of time, it's almost impossible to identify that very easily, right?
Yeah, when you say lost or damaged, I remember pulling receipts out of my wallet that have been sitting there for,
When they start to
a
fade.
couple weeks, and they're either faded or all black because they're on thermal paper. And I'm in Arizona, so you barely leave it in the car for 15 minutes, and now it's a black piece
Melted.
of paper. It's not melted. It's not a
Absolutely.
fire hazard. It's just turned all the activated all the thermal residue, as now it's all black. But yeah, it's how are you going to substantiate that expense if you have crumpled up piece of paper, or or has nothing, or
Overheated.
is all black? Yeah,
You just hope that somebody will pass that, and
yeah, right.
Scan it in
Holding it up to
sooner.
the
right. Yeah, no, I mean, it's we've seen all sorts of things, right? I mean, I was speaking to somebody the other day, one of the accountant, and she said we've seen everything from cigarette butts to all sorts of things put in an expense shoebox, right? I mean, I used to think that the term shoebox full of receipts is probably just being used in a lighter note, but until somebody actually showed me a shoebox full of receipts, I was like, wow, it actually exists. So yeah, I mean, that's the life of an accountant, unfortunately, towards the end of the month, and it's painful, right? So yeah, moving on, if you were to just put a number on what does the cost of reconciliation or actually look like, we're talking about roughly about $58 per expense report, right? And it typically takes about 15 to 20 minutes for an employee to submit one expense report. So it's not only a drain on the accountant, but also a huge drain on the employee, for whom it's not even a primary sort of job to manage, right? And roughly an accountant spends, or accountant bookkeepers spend almost about 30% of their time just trying to reconcile and get the right data into the system, right? So that's a whole lot of effort that people are putting in there.
what
Okay,
what
back.
what
Internet dropped. Sorry.
what where does that $58? I mean, I know you see the link there in the. What is that cost based off of just the time? 20 minutes of time that it takes for the employee, or is there more cost factors?
So
As,
it's a combination of multiple things there, right? So it's not only for the employee, but also the approver who looks at that and says, you know what, it's okay to go ahead and spend this. And then it also goes to the finance folks, if there is a challenge or if there's a question from finance, they need to go through that and then send it back to the employee if they have a question.
Mm.
Also in terms of a possible fraudulent transaction, accounting for a possible fraudulent transaction also is sort of factored in that $58.
Got it. So yeah, I remember my days at Intuit. I was trying to substantiate accidentally getting in a limousine as opposed to a taxi at an airport. I was kind of bamboozled by by the limo driver. It was a combination of why is this so much? I'm like, well, there's more than two people in there, to try. But the guy's like,
Right.
"You need a ride?" I'm like, "Yes." And then all of a sudden, we're walking somewhere else other than the taxi stand. And then
Got it.
shortly after, they instituted, you will always use Uber as
Right.
as the way to get there.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good call out too, because just like when when people talk about managing timesheets, there's so much room for error and so many people get touched. Just one expense report. It's
Yep.
not it's not as minor as you think. It's you go on these conferences, there's a lot of bills that come in. Are they all, what we thought we'd spend? Are we within budget? Is it what we approved to do? Or did somebody get in a limo instead of the $20 Uber?
My cover's blown.
It wasn't this last conference. This was old, but anyway,
Yeah, this was years ago.
years ago.
Like just when Uber was being because I
Oh,
remember seeing like, what the heck is Uber?
Right.
And why do I need to use that as the way to get from
yeah.
airport to hotel?
And it's interesting how they launched it as well, right? I mean, they actually launched the best of the cars to start off with, and then it was
Like-
fun. Those
Like you start with when you go out to eat, you get a good bottle of wine, and if you need more, you go cheaper. Because you don't know the difference anymore.
You don't know the difference after a couple. So
After 3 drinks, they all taste the same.
That's right. The headache gets worse, but that's another story.
All right.
So
Automation.
in terms of power of automation, what can automation really help achieve, right? So in terms of receipt submission, it can ease out the process for the employees. Intelligent extraction and reporting means the employees need to put in lesser effort and time sort of going through this hassle of submitting receipts. Ideally, employees should not have to sort of keep so many receipts in their wallet, like you just mentioned, Dan.
I was just saying that's amazing that you don't have to do that. We all are programmed that those receipts go somewhere. I mean, even if it's in a manila envelope by month, you got to save them forever, 7 years or whatever. But this gets around that. That's phenomenal.
Absolutely. And from an accounting standpoint as well, it simply means that you can check any possible fraudulent transactions more easily. If the system can match the receipts to the transactions, that's great. If we're able to send that information into the accounting software automatically, that's even better. It's the best that you could hope for, right? So I think by having the right expense management software, you can potentially sort of eliminate the manual processes which are involved in the reconciliation and save a lot of productive time and give that time back to the employees and also to the finance folks so that they can have a better time somewhere on the beach in Hawaii, right? So I think also it means better employee experience, more visibility into how employees are spending across the organization. You get to have a dashboard view of where people are spending, what project is gonna is costing them how much, and so on and so forth. Also, minimizing error, due to if you're able to reduce the dependency on human inputs, then you're actually also going to reduce the possible human error that can happen. Right. And in most of the solutions, you typically also have an audit trail, a digital audit trail. From a compliance standpoint, from an audit perspective, it becomes super simple and easy to for somebody to sort of go back there several months, several years after the transaction, also to track exactly what has transpired there, right? Overall, I think it can save a lot of time and effort and frustration, for everybody sort of involved in the process, right? So I think that is what I wanted to sort of share in today's discussion. Would love to sort of top it up with more information in the weeks to come.
I did have a question. What is when you said it minimizes the fraud, do you set the criteria in the software just to, keep an eye out for, or does it have AI to figure that out?
Well, it is a combination of that. It depends on what software you're using, but it is possible in today's world and in age, it is possible for a machine learning system to gather, some of the settings that you've set up and build on that and use AI to sort of intelligently sort of identify any possible fraudulent transactions. For example, we can set up settings where we're able to immediately let employees know if there is a fraudulent transactions, or the administrators, or let's say even the firm owners know about it immediately.
Awesome.
So what you're kind of tying this back to to last week, where we talked about the way to solve for multiple credit cards feeds coming in is to do this parent child organize your chart of accounts in this parent child holder or child holder card holder situation, with something that you're proposing, as far as File is an expense management solution, right? We're not we want to be transparent about that. It's something that a solution that you potentially are providing. They don't need to do it that way. They just set up one account. The expense management software will manage all of the take that squiggly line that you had there and turn it into a nice straight line, and then just feed it into one account, without necessarily connecting the bank feeds, right?
Correct. I mean, you don't need to connect the bank feeds into QuickBooks at all. Any transaction which happens, as soon as the employee swipes their card, that transaction lands into File immediately. And employee also gets to take a photograph of the receipt, respond to a text message which is sent to them. Okay. So imagine you're waiting in a line at Starbucks. You swipe your card immediately, even before your cappuccino is ready. You have a text message
before they even call your name.
Oh yeah, of course. Right. And instantly you just take a photograph of the receipt and respond to that text message, and you're done.
And they could go, "Oops, I need to pay you this back," or "This I took this client out for breakfast," and substantiate it. Can you use this solution as a standalone solution? I know it works great with QBO.
Yep. Okay. QBO, QBD. We can also use it standalone.
Oh, excellent. Okay, good to know.
Right.
So, so Vikram and some of his colleagues are either going to be joining us, over the next few weeks as we kind of unpack some of these expense management woes,
Yeah.
and talk about business workflows that businesses will come across when dealing with expense management, and how do they more effectively manage their expenses. See how I just changed flip the words around. kind of use the definition as the answer. So we're not going to see you next week, but we'll have another topic about expenses. Maybe we'll do a demo, Carrie, about let's do it the hard way. and then when Vikram with file comes back, then we see, well, let's see how easy it is outside of that, by using an expense management software. So thanks again for joining us today, Vikram, and thank you all for tuning in. And we'll see you next time on the workshop webinar, or the Wednesday workshop. And we're brought to you by School of Bookkeeping. And if you like what you see and you want to make sure that you're updated, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you'll get notifications once we go live, so that you can see us and partake of the live broadcast. So we'll see you next time on the workshop.
Have a great week, and thanks for
Thanks for joining. Thanks for inviting me. Thank you. Cheers.